Yeah.
So I stayed at work or I studied, worked
Right.
in college just to stay away from it.
Mm.
Anyway, I put in for Kennedy. There was a place called the New York Common IFR Room. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yep, opened in '69.
It could be. I'm not sure because I went up there and, I was in the Kennedy sector in '77,
Okay.
June of '77, and that's right. That was before the trade gun, and then by November '77, the Concorde started coming in, which was interesting. And the chief pilot from British Airways, Concorde pilot, came in and used to brief us. And by the time I was through training a year later, which was unheard of, and
Yeah. That's fast.
I pushed. You know what happened? There was all the traffic in Kennedy came in the afternoon, and it met up with the national traffic, and they just swapped passengers.
Mm-hmm.
So it got pretty busy. And so at one point I started training my students on the Concorde tactics and what you had to do when he came in and landed and took off, because very fast. By the time he hit the end of the runway, he was doing 250, and you had to get him out of the way. They wanted to go over water where they didn't make noise.
Right.
And so we worked all that out. Anyway, I'm talking on a mile a minute, and I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Anyway, the job came open at the Common Eye, so I went up there. I was the first woman in the Kennedy sector. There was one woman in the LaGuardia sector. They had Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark together. And of course, they didn't want me there. You're a woman. We don't want you here. You women can't, vector traffic. We want you to go home and get barefoot and pregnant. I said, that's not my thing.
Right.
So, been there, tried that, didn't work. And I just kept at my job. I got checked out within a year. And one of the funniest things that happened, one of the guys that everybody in the room totally respected was named Jim Cameron. I have the best respect for that man. I was sitting down the first time at a position that was working 2 arrival positions for Kennedy, and they were combined up. And I'm just working and driving. 15 minutes I spent on the position so far. Jim comes in the back. He taps me on the shoulder. He says, "How long have you been on the position?" I said, "I looked at the log." I said, 15 minutes. He says, "No, total." I said, 15 minutes. He said, "Man, you got a set of balls." I said, so that went all around the room, just what I needed, right? Anyway, it was funny. So I checked out there, checked out the Common Eye, and the guys by end of '79 were talking strike, and I wasn't about to go on strike.
Mm-hmm.
Just wasn't. I just don't believe in strikes. Not when I'm an employee of the federal government.
Right.
It's the wrong thing to do. But they
New
did
York
their
was
thing.
sort of the hotbed of
Oh, tell me about it.
yeah.
They were animals. I shouldn't say that about them. There are a lot of nice guys there.
Sure.
In fact, I still stay in communication with some of them. Anyway, I was working a position one day. I, of course, was getting a lot of threats and all this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, this big, tall guy, 6'4" guy named Jack Keys, came and sat down beside me. And it was kind of quiet that day. And he said, "Sue, what's going on?" And I wouldn't tell him because I didn't know which side of the fence he was on.
Right.
And I finally told him, and he got mad. He got up and slapped himself. He said, "I'll take care of it." What he told those Paco guys, I don't know, but they pretty much left me alone after that. I used to go to their ice hockey games. The New York Common Eye used to skate against the New York City Police and the New York Firemen, so I used to go to some of their ice hockey games in the middle of the night. It's the only time they could get the ice. So I guess Jack appreciated that. So anyway, he backed me up. So that's how I met Jack Keys. There was another young man from the LaGuardia sector that I met. Name was Ben Sliney. And Ben was instrumental in stopping all the traffic on 911. Jack had gone on to the command center.
Right.
And that particular day, he was up in Canada negotiating something. And Ben, it was his first day on the position as supervisor in the common area in the command center, Ben Sliney. And so all this started going down. 911, the buildings are getting hit and so forth.
Right.
And so he's scrambling around. And the film that they made called United 93, Ben's in it with a lot of the controllers who were working that day, is a very well done film.
Okay, I've not seen it.
Yep, you should see it. United 93, not the other one.
Right.
But this one's very well done. So Ben got all the traffic stopped after some coordination. He just said, "No, that's it, no more traffic in the United States," and made everybody land, which I thought was the only time in history that's ever happened.
Right, exactly.
So he's my hero. Jack's my hero.
Good.
So there were some really great guys out of the Common Eye, New York Tracon. And by March of 81, they opened up the New York Tracon, I guess. And I'm in the interim, before the strike, my husband, who was still my husband, got transferred back to Washington National because he had followed me up to the region. And we got back together again, which I didn't want, but he was threatening suicide. And I said, oh, I don't want that on my mind. He was just he was always working on my mind. Anyway, he went back and I said, well, do I keep my marriage together or what do I do here? So I followed him back. I got a job at Baltimore, Washington. I checked out there. We bought a house in Annapolis, Maryland, which was lovely. I loved Annapolis. I wanted to learn to sail there, but I did go sailing with the chief of Andrews. He took us out occasionally in his sailboat. It was beautiful. And so I checked out there, and I have to stop and think what I'm doing now because I don't know where I am at.
You're in the Tracon in Baltimore?
Yeah, I was at the Tracon in Baltimore. No, the Baltimore wasn't in the Tracon. Okay. Baltimore was just a separate facility. It was called Friendship back then. That became BWA, and now I'm named after a judge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I should know his name, but I was gone after that.
It's now named, Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yep.
And so you were in the tower?
Well, Tower Radar.
Oh, gotcha.
It was an up and down facility.
Okay.
Yep. So, where did I go from Baltimore?
Again, the only female.
The strike. Yeah, I was the only. No, there's two other gals in Baltimore. By now, it's coming up on August 3rd, 1981, and all the guys in the Common Eye or in the Tracon by now had gone on strike, except 5 guys in the LaGuardia sector. And one of the men from the region came down to Ed Trudeau and went through our facility to see how things were going, because we had to take a circuitous route to get in the facility to stay safe, because it was, they had lines that you had to go through. And,
picketers?
Yep. And it was a little bit scary, but
I bet.
You just get through it. They didn't scare me. Well, they did, but anyway.
You didn't show it.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went back up to I said, Dad, I want to go back to the Tracon. He says, do you know what you're getting yourself into? I said, I didn't tell him what I'd been going through there with my ex-husband and the strikers and so forth. And
did your husband strike?
No, he was a supervisor.
Oh, he was supervisor, right.
Yep. So I told him, I said, I'm leaving. I'm going back to the Common Eye, or the New York Tracon. And he understood. I had 3 pets that I dearly loved. An Irish setter that was magnificent. His father was all-time champion Irish setter of the world. I mean, I got pictures of these dogs. They're just beautiful. Got them there in Long Island. And somebody gave me a little Spitz, a little ball of fur. Little Tiffany Marie, her name was. She was already named. I met this girl in one of the classes in the Federal Building in Manhattan, and she found out that I had a house in Stony Brook and about an acre of land. She said, will you take my little dog? Because she was getting kicked out of her apartment. But anyway, I also had a little gray kitty called Charlie Cat, and he became huge. Those were my babies. And so I kept them, of course, and then left the husband, which was fine. And back in the Army, I had a couple of horses, too, that I didn't tell you about, but
wow.
I sure had. It was a neat.
So he had kept the house in New York when you came?
Yeah, in 1979, I built a log cabin. My father had a 300-acre dairy farm that my grandparents bought when they came from Holland. Wow. They had 7 kids. They had 2 more after they got to the States. And my dad was one of them, thank goodness. He was the finest man, finest human being I've ever known. He's just a super, super guy. My mother we won't talk about. She had issues and used to use me as her whipping child, hitting me and all this stuff, telling me I was no damn good and all that. So I just put up with it, and after a while I started running away from home. Not far. Right. I would go up on the mountain and hide, stay overnight or whatever. And finally I was going to hitchhike to San Jose, California, because they had a school there for police. And my father found out about it. He says, you're not going, you're going to stay here. He's very quiet, very mild-mannered. The Dutchman, very nice, blue-eyed, handsome man. And so I said, okay, Pop, I'll stay here. I'll finish school, but then I'm leaving. And that's about the time I went into the Army. Anyway, we got off the track here a bit. What do we want to know now?
So, strike. So, I'm sure they were hurting for people in New York. So that was
there was nobody. There was no. I mean, almost everybody went on strike. There was
Okay.
just 5 left in the LaGuardia sector. Of course, you had to go through the picket lines every day, and they would beat on your car and spit on you and do all this
Oh,
stuff.
my.
And the guys that stayed, that worked the actual traffic, the staff and management had retrained to stay in the sector. And me, the only controller and the only woman, we went through these picket lines every day, which is scary, but we didn't wash our cars because we were afraid of somebody putting bombs on it. I had left my home in, where were we living then? They were living in Annapolis. I had a lovely home in Annapolis. But I left it, and I left my animals there and had a neighbor take care of them, which broke my heart, but they were all right. They were safe. And I left my husband and went up to the New York Tracon and finally got a divorce kit, did my own divorce online. I called him and told him, I said, you know, you get some paperwork coming from the sheriff. He said, okay, he understood I was through with the whole thing. And I guess he realized I was strong enough to handle the divorce if I can go through all the rest of this
Now,
garbage.
did you go back and get your critters then?
Of course I did.
All right.
Yeah, darn right. I bought a little house on Long Island and brought my babies up. That we used to take vacations up to the Catskills to the log cabin. I could open the door and they could run, you know, just run.
Yeah.
I had 160 acres.
Oh,
Eventually
nice.
I bought from my dad, you know,
Right.
after they passed away and so forth. But we had a grand time. But then they started bringing in neighbors. Like one of them in particular was growing marijuana on my property, killing deer on my property, and
Oh, my.
you know I don't like killing animals anyway. So
Right.
I decided
Yeah.
to.
So what was
Yeah.
the, I mean, at one point the picketers stopped. And
No, actually they didn't. What
Oh,
they
really?
started doing down in New York, and particularly, you had to remember this is a county where the cops were all unionized also, so they were in sympathy with the strikers.
Okay.
But the strikers used to bring their wives and then their kids for over a year. You know, we were working 60 hours a week, you know,
Right.
going through all this. But it used to bother me to see these little kids out there with the looks on their faces when their mother and father are screaming obscenities at us. They didn't know what was going on. It was just criminal.
Yeah.
But eventually, I don't know, a year and a half later, and they kind of faded away. So it was sad, just really sad.
Yeah,
Because we lost a lot of really good controllers.
I agree.
By now, 79, 81, I was first president of the PWC.
Right, so,
That was
so
79 to 81.
yeah, so, Jackie said that sort of you started coming up with a nucleus back in '68.
Yeah, she and I were in school together. We started talking about it. She had women in California she could talk to. I had nobody in New York. No other women I could talk to.
Wow.
So, which is okay. I mean, we wrote letters and telephone once in a while. I flew out a couple of times. We had fam trips back then. That's another nice thing that happened in Albany. When I took my first fam trip, it was on American Airlines, and I went in for a fam trip from Albany through Chicago into LA, and it came back from American Airlines, disapproved because you're a woman, we don't allow women in the cockpit.
Oh my.
And I went down later on my chief's desk, I said, Chief, we got a problem here. He says, they can't do that, you're certified. And I said, all right, sir. So he sent on through the region, who sent it to headquarters, who went back to America, and they said, you got to let her fly. She's a certified controller. So perhaps I was the first woman allowed on American Airlines.
Wow, yeah, sounds like it.
Whatever.
Right.
I finally got in the cockpit. Anyway, I get in the 747 in Chicago. Of course, you know how big they are. And the pilot sitting there, and the co-pilot, and the engineer. And they're very nice, very, very polite. And of course, I had all my credentials and everything. And there's a guy that came up on a cherry picker to clean the windows outside of my little window behind the captain. And he sees me sitting there, and he goes, like that, and the captain goes, like it's the big sticker, cracked me up. That was Captain William Cherry. He was a pilot during World War II. He flew Captain Eddie Rickenbacker on a tour, and they crashed. There was he had I forgot the type of airplane he had, but most of them made it out. I think one or two of the crew. It's on the website.
Okay.
Captain Eddie, and they even made a movie about it. But
Wow.
he was a super guy, you know. And then the co-pilot said, "Well, I had a little problem too. He was on final to LaGuardia, and his plane crashed." And I'm looking at the engineer. He says, "No," he says, "I'm safe." I said,
Really, it's like,
"Yeah."
should I get off now?
No, we had a good flight. We had a good flight. We flew from Chicago into LA. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. You could see 200 miles north, 200 miles south, so you could see the lakes. You could see everything. It was just a beautiful flight. It's just something you just never forget.
And you already had your pilot's license.
Well, just a student at the time.
Okay.
I never went on.
Okay,
Not when I could bootleg Army aircraft.
good point.
Bird dogs and beavers and everything. Of course, the
Oh.
helicopters. But so when I see Jackie and we talked more about it, but she had about 17,000 kids around her, so she could really, she had her own
She
free.
told us, yes.
Yeah, she had a whole bunch of kids, and so we had fun. We went to a zoo type situation outside. I forgot the name of the place, but animals would come up and
Oh, neat.
you want to leave your windows up. But we had a good time. And I flew back and I went back into Albany, and that's where I continued on the career. This is get boring to you?
No, not at all. Not at all. So you're just hoping so you could go.
Yeah, right. So anyway,
So you went from Tracon back to Albany?
no,
No, okay.
Dracon. No, here's where it gets a little hairy. It really bugged me. My parents were in their late 70s. They started to fade, and I was the oldest of four, and I felt an obligation to take care of them. So
Sure.
I went from the Tracon. I got a soup's job at Binghamton, New York, which is 70 miles from home. So now I'm driving 140 miles a day. On Long Island, I was doing 150 miles from Stony Brook to Kennedy every day. We had a carpool at least. But here you're up upstate New York, where you got snow,
Snow.
all kinds of stuff going on. I
Right.
had a four-wheel vehicle, but it's still, for 4 years, it was slogging
rough.
around. The first year I was there, I had 4 facility managers. That first, they just didn't stay for whatever reason.
Wow.
And then we finally got one in there that he was a real stinker, and he would start on me because I was the only woman, and I put up with this crap for a while. And I finally, after all my service with the military and the FAA, I filed a grievance against him, and it came back approved, and he had to write a letter of apology, which he did, but he continued doing the same stuff again. So I filed another grievance against him, and this time headquarters and the region got involved. They took my job away from me. And they sent him to the Western region, and they were going to send me either to, I asked to go back to the Tracon, they said no. So they said, you can go to Syracuse, where the facility manager came down to interview us all, or tell me what was going on. I never did find out why they really got rid of me. I don't even care at this point. Anyway, I won't even tell you his name, it doesn't matter. I was just so upset. It happened to be my second wedding anniversary too, because I had met a guy on the golf course up in my hometown,
Oh.
a widower, and we really hit it off. He was 20 years older, but we played golf. He taught me how to play golf. He taught everybody in that area how to play golf. He's a
Wow.
super golfer, and he was 20 years older, as I said, and we just had a grand time. So, played a lot of golf, and he passed away eventually.
Wow.
11 years.
Mr. Thompson?
Yep, Burdett David Townsend. He was in the Navy in World War II. His son